So, Chris, what are some of the most frequent types of medical device malfunctions that lead to patient harm during or after surgical procedures, and what kinds of devices are most commonly involved?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a most common, but things can happen like sutures can break after surgery. You sometimes have pumps that don't work or fail after the surgery. Um, you can also have like hardware, like joint replacement, that are it's pretty common surgery nowadays to have knee or hip replacements. Those are pretty notorious for failing after the surgery. So those are the kinds of failures in medical devices you can have.
And in the case of a medical device malfunction, during or after surgery, who can be held liable? The surgeon, the hospital, the device manufacturer, and how is that liability determined?
Yeah, well, depends on the circumstances. Most of the time, it's the manufacturer or the seller distributor of the medical device, but it depends, why it failed and when it failed. A hospital is responsible for, maintaining equipment. Like in terms of, for example, we had a case where in the recovery room, our patient was put on a type of pump where they could self-administer morphine, for the pain. Um, it's supposed to limit the amount that the patient can give, but the machine broke and they gave too much morphine, and our client's wife died as a result of that. In that case, the machine wasn't maintained properly. There was a ticket put in because it wasn't working properly, and the hospital didn't take it out of service, didn't fix the machine. So in that situation, the hospital can be held liable. Most of the time, when there's a medical device malfunction, the doctor's not held responsible unless he's using the equipment wrong, the way it's not intended to be used, or he knows there's a problem. He or she knows that there's a problem with the medical device and goes ahead and uses it anyway. But in most instances, it's going to be the manufacturer, the seller, or the hospital for failing to maintain the equipment.
What role does the FDA's pre-market approval process play in preventing medical device malfunctions, and are there limitations to that?
Yeah, well, any device before it can be used, in a medical setting for treatment of a patient has to be approved by the FDA, and there is a process that the manufacturer has to go through to get FDA approval, which involves testing the equipment, testing it under the intended use, and supplying that test data and the information and the intended uses to the FDA. So the limitations are going to be, if they don't provide accurate or complete information to the FDA, or if the device is being used for something that's not, an intended use that the FDA approved it for. Those are the limitations.
If a medical device malfunctions, what evidence is crucial for establishing a successful claim against a manufacturer or other responsible parties?
Well, the first most important thing is going to be the history of the machine. When was it purchased? How long has it been used? Has there been any problems with it? Also, the FDA maintains a list of medical device failures. So the hospital is responsible for any time there is a medical device that fails to report that to the FDA. The FDA, keeps track of that. And if there's too many, then they issue a recall. So, obviously, you want to know if this medical device has ever been recalled. But if it hasn't been recalled, that doesn't mean there hasn't been several hundred or thousand complaints about it. So that's public information that's available through the FDA. And then the hospital maintenance records are also, if the device has been in service or had been used for a period of years, you want to know what the history is and what kind of maintenance it's undergone, and maybe it's outlived. I was going to say, maybe it's outlived its useful life.
What are some of the long-term health issues that can arise from a malfunctioning medical device, and how does that play into addressing damage calculations in a case, in a medical malpractice case?
But I mean, if a medical device malfunctions during surgery, obviously that's going to be very dire because most surgery, a lot of surgeries are life and death, and patients can die from that. Same thing, like if you have a suture, that breaks, which is not all that uncommon. Following surgery, that can also cause a patient to bleed to death. I mean, if they've sutured a blood vessel or an artery, that breaks. So I mean, it could be very serious consequences to the patient. And in any medical negligence case, you can always recover for the financial costs of either future medical care, lost wages, any kind of money losses, plus pain, suffering, trauma that the patient goes through.
And then finally, how do product liability laws interact with medical malpractice laws in these cases where a medical device malfunction, causes an injury during surgery or after surgery, and what are the implications for a patient's legal options, with this product liability versus medical malpractice sort of idea?
Well, if the case is against the manufacturer, the seller of the medical device, that's going to be a products liability claim. And so they're similar, but they're different causes of action. Of products liability, you have a 2-year statute of limitations versus a 1-year statute of limitations in a medical negligence case. Sometimes, or a lot of times, actually, in these cases, you have to sue both the doctor and the hospital and the manufacturer, and either let them fight it out to determine who's responsible, or at least take depositions, start investigating the case, get records, get the FDA records, and sort out if it is a products liability case or a medical malpractice case.